Romani people, who are also referred to as gypsies, are an ethnic group who originally came from India. They left India 1,000 years ago and gradually travelled westwards. They spread across Europe, settling in different countries. Gypsies mostly led nomadic lives and earned their living as they travelled. They lived in wagons and tents. However, in nearly every country where gypsy people settled, they faced prejudice and persecution. In Europe before the First World War, many governments were beginning to take action to control their movements and curtail their freedom. Between the First and Second World Wars, there are accounts of gypsies in Europe being singled out and sent to labour camps. Some authorities believed that gypsies were subhuman, incapable of adapting to civilised society, and should be eradicated. Laws were passed preventing them from travelling, trading, visiting public places, and marrying outside their community. From 1936 in Germany, there was a policy to eliminate the gypsy population entirely. Anyone who had any gypsy blood at all, or resembled a gypsy in appearance, would be classified as a gypsy. European governments started cooperating with the Nazi Party in Germany to identify and register gypsy people throughout Europe. After the start of the Second World War, as Germany invaded European countries, there was a concerted effort in each country to destroy the gypsy race. Some gypsies were rounded up and shot on the spot. Others were deported to concentration camps, where few survived. It is estimated that in total, over 500,000 gypsies were killed. Despite this, even today there is little mention of the cruel atrocities that devastated the gypsy race. Auschwitz, in Poland, was one of the largest concentration camps where gypsies were incarcerated. Some Romani gypsies in England are now keen to go there and learn more about what happened.
My name's Sally Woodbury. I'm a Romani Gypsy from the southwest of England, and I want to make this DVD with the Race Equality Council to find out what happened to my people and find out why it's been kept silent for so many years and not talked about, because it took 15 years for me to know that gypsy people were killed in the Holocaust, and I want to make it children understand that when they see these pictures, these are actually the same gypsies that they sometimes might have in their own classroom. They're human beings, these are your friends, and these friends could have actually been made to go to this place. The next stage of what we're going to do is go over to Poland, to Auschwitz. I want to go there to show my respects. I think it's going to be very tough, I think it's going to be very emotional. Somebody did say to me, when you go there you've got to dance, and I didn't quite understand what they meant by it, but they said gypsies, when they go there now in Roma, they go there and dance to say thank you, we're here, you died but we're here and we're still alive and we've still survived. When I first got to the entrance and we pulled up, I got quite emotional about it, and I didn't know how I was going to cope. And it was very daunting, and the most shocking thing was how close it was to the village. It's very big, and it's two separate camps, which was a bit of a shock to me. I knew they were separate, but I didn't quite understand the geographics of it. And then the picture of the sign, of an aerial photograph of how big it was, that just completely shocked me, because it was just huge, and it was basically shocking to the scale it was to kill people.
Over 23,000 gypsies were sent to Auschwitz, where there was a separate area to accommodate them. This was called the Zigeunerlager, or gypsy camp. They were brought to the camp from all over Germany and the occupied territories, crowded into cattle trucks, without food and water and with no idea of what lay ahead. When each group arrived at the camp, they were registered, tattooed, and they had their heads shaved. They were then stripped naked, men, women and children together, and washed in freezing water. They slept in very overcrowded conditions in wooden barracks. Each building was designed to accommodate 400 people, but up to 1,000 were crammed in, with whole families sharing a small bunk. In the camp, men, women and children were forced to carry out hard labour. Thousands died of starvation, disease and brutality, but with more arriving each week, there was a continuous supply of workers. Dr. Joseph Mengele, the most notorious Nazi doctor, was assigned to work in the gypsy camp. Witness accounts speak of Mengele befriending gypsy children, but then carrying out many horrific medical experiments on them, like injecting ink into their eyeballs to change the colour of their eyes. Both adults and children were subjected to painful and often lethal medical procedures and then killed so Mengele could dissect their bodies. Women were routinely sterilised. In England, word had got back to gypsy communities that something awful was happening to gypsies in Europe. This fear was not unfounded, as in 1942 the Nazi Security Service was collecting information on gypsies in Great Britain.
We would hear a lot of tales from soldiers who had come back from foreign parts and tell us. We would ask, did you see any Romanis there? And then they would say yes, but the Romanis were all rounded up and put into ghettos, and of course eventually were gassed in the concentration camps. There was a lot more focus on the Jews, and it soon died away about the Romani people. They didn't really put much thought to them. Didn't hear much about the Romanis at all. Yes, there was a lot of talk amongst Romanis in this country, in England and Wales, but there wasn't a lot of news in the newspaper about the Romanis that were killed. Well, we did hear that they said they fought to the last, and we thought we'd be the first to be killed.
Going to the exhibits, that was the most emotional bit for me. And the lady that took us around and told us different things, and she was mainly talking about the gypsy community, that was very upsetting, very emotional. To see the hair, and you can't even describe it, you can see it on pictures, but until you're there and actually see it, and this was only obviously a small part of hair, because the rest had been sold in years gone by. I always heard that the hair was used to make things, but it wasn't until the tour guide explained to us in detail. It was so unbelievably shocking, and there was actually a roll of fabric there laid, which is in the pictures, which was given to the museum after the war, which was from a fabric factory. It used to be horse's hair and wool, but that was more expensive than human hair. And when she said that horse's hair was worth more money than human hair, that was completely shocking, because a human's life was not worth as much as a horse. And it was just the shoes, and then the adult shoes affected me, but what affected me more was then there was a separate compartment of just children's shoes, and I was just looking at the individual shoes, just thinking about the individual people who it could have been, whose lives, like children's lives, and that was very, very sad. There is a small gas chamber left on Auschwitz 1. It was used for many things, but it was also used as a gas chamber, and I was really dreading to go through that, and I actually said I wouldn't do it, and then my sister said to me, go through it to show respect the gypsies that died, to say you come out the other side. So I built up the courage to go into the door, but as I got to the door, I think the vision of seeing the model of the gypsies with the kids, I just had this emotion come through me that I could imagine walking through there with my kids, and I just couldn't, and I just got very, very upset. It was just too upset to walk in. I couldn't do it.
Sally, why couldn't you go in the gas chamber?
I just imagine taking your children in there. It's just, I can't go in there. I'm lucky I got through the door, I think. Did you go right through?
Yeah.
Is there a memorial in there?
There's some candles in there. In 1944, an order was given that all the gypsies in Auschwitz should die. On the 2nd of August, those men and boys still capable of working were sent from Auschwitz to work in other camps where the majority would eventually die. That same night, The women, the children and the sick were forced into the gas chambers. Accounts from other prisoners say the gypsies fought to the very end.
We were walking around the museum and I could see this little old man and two young men from America talking. And he said, I lived in Krakow, and then he went on to say that I told him that we'd been to Auschwitz, and he told me that he'd been to Auschwitz. The minute he told me he'd been to Auschwitz, I knew he was a survivor. And he undone I actually helped him undo his shirt because he was struggling to undo his shirt. And I helped him, and he showed me his numbers on his arm. And he asked us what we were there for, and we were told him we were making a DVD about the gypsies. And a shiver went right down our spines, because as soon as we said the word gypsies, he said, oh my God, the night the gypsies died. I can remember the night the gypsies died. And he told us how they were all put into the gas chambers. It was over the 2nd and 3rd of August. And there were so many of them that ovens couldn't cope with them. And he said they had pits, ash pits, and they literally burnt the bodies. He said, and it's awful to talk about this, but people need to know that the smell of flesh lingered for days and smoke, and that in some cases some of the bodied people and children were still alive, and they still pushed them into the fires. And it was just like it was meant to be, because I never thought in my day I would ever meet a survivor. He wasn't a Roma gypsy, but he was a survivor, and he said, I always tell people what happened to the gypsies because it was so sad. I would say I didn't show my respects. I felt I wanted to, but how can a bunch of flowers and me looking at a memorial, when I show my respects will be the day that we can get people to recognise what has happened. So yes, I'm glad I showed my respects in that way, but I was sad that I can't do it enough, and that's why I will continue to do it and continue to fight for them to be recognised.
There is still widespread persecution and racism against gypsies today all over Europe. What frightens us is that the language used about gypsies in England today echoes the language used about gypsies in Nazi Germany.